6 people. Today's lesson, you'll be learning on the topic of alternative dispute resolution. On short, I'll call it ADR. ADR is an umbrella which describes a range of methods of resolving legal disputes without ever having recourse to litigations in the courts. So ADR covers so many variety of things such as tribunals, arbitration, conciliation, mediation, mid-arb, and amongst others. So there are certain similarities between all these methods. There is no judge and there is no need to have any lawyers present either. So for today's lecture, I will focus the lesson on tribunal. So before I start my lecture, I want you to imagine these two situations. So imagine first, you want to purchase like a PlayStation 4, but you have like limited amount of funds. So you go to this game shop and then the seller agrees to sell you at a discounted price, let's say 200 British pounds. And you know the original price is like, let's say 330. So you purchase the PlayStation 4 and when you return home, you realize that it's not in good condition, even though the seller actually has assured you that it's original, first hand, etc. etc. So what can you do? Can you bring the case to court? So the second situation will be that you and your mom go for a shopping, and after that you're approached by a salesperson saying that if you purchase a certain amount of items, let's say £5,000, and you'll get free iPhone 6. So let's say that's the situation. And then after that you purchase all those stuff and then the salesperson did not honor his promises. So what would you do? Can you take an action to court? So you cannot go to court to sue the sellers because the items are not worth that much to go through the legal proceedings. So what can you do? So in these two situations, you can actually bring the matter to the tribunal. So what is a tribunal? A tribunal system falls under one of the categories of alternative dispute resolution. Tribunal has a long history and it has the oldest citation of the modern use of the word in the Oxford English Dictionary itself, 2nd edition, 1989, and it is from the Military Services Act, 1916. But if you are looking for a specific definition, unfortunately, there is none. There is no accepted definition of a tribunal. So, in the case of Royal Aquarium and Summer and Winter Garden Society and Parkinson, Lord Justice Fry expressed the opinion that the word has not, like the word court, has an acceptable meaning in English law. So tribunals are exclusively judicial bodies that operate in a way which distinguishes from the other courts. So essentially they are like courts, in a way they are dedicated places where people can go to try to resolve the legal disputes, but they are not courts in terms of there's no formalities, etc. So they are specialized and relatively informal bodies designed for resolving legal disputes within their area of expertise quickly and relatively cheaply. So they tend to be less formal than going to court and with more flexibility in the sense of where and when the party to the dispute can actually meet. So how do you distinguish tribunals from the courts? So a particular feature of most tribunals in the presence of non-legally qualified, we're talking about lay members here, alongside with the legally qualified judge to provide an extra level of specialized expertise. So the defining qualities of tribunals are such that they are very cheap, they can be accessed at any time, freedom from technicalities, expeditious, and you have expert people with having expert knowledge on a particular subject. But alternatively, so apart from tribunals, you can also have a dispute between business partners, married couples, neighbours, landlord and tenants, and disputes can actually resolve not through tribunal but via mediation itself. So what is mediation? So mediation can be defined as a process whereby you have a third mediator which helps both sides of the dispute to come to a mutually acceptable agreement. So once both parties have agreed to a certain decision, it can be written down and form a binding contract, and it is enforceable in court. So if not, you can always opt for the traditional civil litigation, which is still open to the parties. So what's the differences between tribunal and mediation? So like I mentioned earlier, when you talk about tribunal, it does not involve lawyers, whereas for mediation, you can actually bring one. It's entirely up to the parties itself. So, and also for tribunals, it's cheap, whereas for mediation, it's usually cheap, but it also depends on the situation if you hire a solicitor to represent your case. And in terms of tribunals, it's usually concerned between you and a salesperson, you and a ministry or a department. It's not concerned with relationship. Whereas when you talk about mediation, it usually involves on maintaining family relationship of employer, employee, neighbors, landlord and tenant, because you still want to preserve the relationship as much as possible. So, and other criteria as well is whereby in terms of tribunal, there will be some controlling in terms of the proceedings because the existence of the judge itself, whereas the mediation, the parties are actually in control. So there will be a mediator who listens to both sides of the parties. By the end of the day, it's the parties who come up with the solutions. And lastly, tribunals, it usually involves commercial matters, whereas mediation, it can involve commercial, but it's usually more towards private and family matters. Alright, so that's all for today's lesson. So you can refer to the note if